Alright, so welcome to the crash course on Nitro Cold Brew. The first step in creating Nitro Cold Brew is to brew the cold brew itself. It's no different than the way that we have been brewing it in the past. However, there are a few key things that we'd like to touch on just for consistency's sake so that we're all on the same page. The grind size that we're using is we're going to be doing regular perk, and if it's not busy, we usually do half batches of cold brew. However, with the summer months coming here, we'll just be doing the 5-pound full batches. So that's an entire 5-pound bag of Zamboni, 5 gallons of water, and then ground, put into the paper filter along with the mesh liner with the elastic band, and then 3 gallons of water are bloomed through the grounds themselves. The bag is then cinched and tied with the included strips of hemp cord, and then 2 gallons of water are placed on top. Then it's brewed for 24 hours in the fridge. We have 2 brewing right now. And then this is basically what you'll use to transfer directly into one of these 5-gallon kegs after cutting it. The ratio that we're going to use is going to be a 60-40 mix. Basically, it's going to be 60% cold brew concentrate, 40% water. 50-50 is a little too weak, so we won't do that. If we decide that it's not strong enough, we will go ahead and change it. But basically, to use the keg, all you have to do is pour the cold brew through the opening, pre-mixed already. So there are lines on the toddy itself that will assist you in creating the 60-40 ratio. So just look at the level of cold brew in the toddy concentrate once you take the paper filter out, and then add to that 40% water. And then once that's all done, you should be left with around close to 4 gallons of the ready-to-serve cold brew that can then be transferred into the kegs. The kegs themselves, once you have transferred everything in, are closed up and locked tight. You stick the lid in, and then you push the handle down, and you'll hear that noise, and that's how you know it's closed. And then that's not going anywhere, and you can go ahead and transfer it to the kegerator. Alright, the next step in the nitrogen process is we're going to connect the keg that we have our cold brew pre-mixed in to the actual kegerator itself. So, in principle, the kegerator is just a glorified refrigerator with a bunch of gas and lines connected to it. So, we can start by taking our keg and noticing where it says input and output. It'll just say in and out. In is going to be where our gas line is connected. Out is going to be where our cold brew line is connected, that then goes to the taps up here. So basically, we have 2 lines with ball connectors. Don't worry about this line. This is not being used at the moment. Just worry about the red line and this clear line going to this thing in here. This is our nitro infuser. So basically, we want to take the connection with the red line. As you'll see, it is connected up to the pressure regulator on our nitrogen canister, and we'll stick that onto the input. So it basically works similar to any air compressor does. You pull back on this safety sheath, secure it to the top, make sure it goes all the way down, and then you let go of the safety sheath, and it shouldn't go anywhere. And we can do the same with the second one. This clear one is connected to the output. We want cold brew to come out of the keg and through the lines into the tap. So connect that there, and that's done. Now we have to pressurize the keg. This is done pretty simply. If you notice on the pressure regulator, there's a shutoff valve here. If you rotate it 90 degrees into the direction of the flow of nitrogen, it'll pressurize the keg. Initially, it'll make a wheezing or like a hissing noise, but that'll go away once the keg is up to the preset pressure. So here we have it preset to right around 30 psi, so it's not a tremendous amount of pressure. However, we have to make sure that the connections are secure because it could be potentially hazardous if mistreated. So we'll go ahead and open the valve, and then open the valve all the way. And then basically you can also check the connections here, make sure there's no hissing, there's no pressure leaking. If there are, give us a call, but basically you can tighten these little clamps up and everything should be okay. And then you'll notice the hissing noise kind of starts to calm down, and that's when you know the keg is completely pressurized. Basically now we're ready to serve the cold brew. So if we come up here to take a look at the taps, we don't have any cold brew in this keg at the moment, so all that will come out is just plain nitrogen and maybe a little bit of residual water that's left in the lines. But that's just basically nitrogen hissing. So we know we're out of cold brew in the 5-gallon keg if you're trying to serve it and all you hear is nitrogen gas coming out of it. And then at that point, you should go ahead and change out the keg.
What happens if you run out of nitrogen?
If you run out of nitrogen, you won't hear anything. So the flow of cold brew will stop and you won't hear the hissing noise. If you run out of nitrogen, changing it is a little bit of a more intricate process, and we can probably make a separate video on that. However, we haven't run into that problem yet. These nitrogen tanks typically will last us quite a long time. And we do have an additional one in the vault. And if you ever, for whatever reason, need to get nitrogen, our supplier is Praxair. So if you have any questions about the nitrogen canister itself, it'd be best to call Danya, myself, or Praxair if you can't reach us. So after you're done serving all of your Nitro cold brew, actually before I get there, another thing I want to mention about the nitrogen process is we have what's called a Nitro infuser. Basically, this is what's going to allow the nitrogen to get infused into the cold brew within the line. So what that means is typically when you're serving Nitro cold brew, it's infused into the keg. However, there are issues with like emulsification, for lack of a better term, of the nitrogen and the cold brew concentrate. So what we use is the Nitro inline infuser. So instead of infusing in the keg, it infuses in this self-contained system. There's not much to it. However, it does have 2 lines going into it. One of them is the blue line. We won't worry about that one because that's connected to the connector that we're not using. And then we have our cold brew line, and it's connected to the Nitro infuser. You can adjust the level of nitrogen infusion using this little white dial here, and it's labeled. So basically if you turn it to the left, it'll add more nitrogen. If you turn it to the right, it'll add less nitrogen or remove nitrogen. This can be adjusted when you notice that the head on the Nitro is like very weak. So if you notice that there isn't very good cascading in the Nitro, or the head isn't really there and all you're getting is cold brew, then you can go ahead and adjust the level of nitrogen. However, it should be preset and we won't have to really play with it too much. So now let's say we run out of Nitro cold brew and we need to refill a keg. What we're going to begin by doing is we're going to shut off the safety valve on the pressure regulator itself by turning it 90 degrees away from the flow of the nitrogen. And then we'll go ahead and disconnect the ball connectors. It doesn't matter which one you disconnect first. Just pull up on the sheath and they should pop off. And that's all disconnected. The system is safe. The only thing left to do is to release the nitrogen that's built up in the keg itself. This is done by pulling on this ring here. It does make a loud hissing noise if you pull it really fast, so you can start by kind of releasing the pressure slowly, and you can start to hear the nitrogen hissing out. And then you can open it more and more, and then you can just completely open it if you want to release it very quickly. Once all the pressure is released in the keg itself, we can go ahead and open it up by pulling up on the release, pushing in, and removing the plug, and then we can go ahead and either set the keg aside for cleaning if we have the other one ready on standby, or we can just fill this one up with cold brew from the fridge along with the concentrate. Alright, the next step is going to be pouring the Nitro cold brew right now I just have water connected to the nitro lines because we can't afford to use any of our cold brew concentrate right now. But before I talk about pouring, let's talk a little bit about glassware versus to-go and for here. So we have two different types of to-go cups. We have the ones that you're already familiar with, which are the 20-ounce plastic, and then we have the 12-ounce plastic, which is going to be exclusive to nitrogenated cold brew only. 20-ounce plastic cups will be used for the still or flat non-nitrogenated cold brew that comes out of this tap here. It's basically going to be used the same way as we would normally do with cold brew, except you're not going to cut any of the cold brew when it comes out of the line because it is already pre-cut with the water in the filling process of the keg. So basically we'll just do what we have always been doing before. You'll open up the line, fill it to our standard line, and then top it with ice. And then that is ready to serve. For these we have lids. Unfortunately, we don't have lids for the 12-ounce cups. However, we will just serve it regardless. If we eventually decide to get lids for the 12-ounce cups, that will be something that we'll introduce. However, for the time being, we'll serve it without lids. Now let's talk about nitrogen and nitro cold brew. The whole premise is that creamy texture that you get from the nitrogen that's infused in the cold brew itself. So we want to not use any ice. If a customer asks you what the difference is because they think they're getting a smaller or less product out of the nitro cold brew, it's still the same volume approximately, except there's just no ice. So you can tell them we don't add ice to the nitro cold brew, it's already pre-chilled. So the way we do this is we use the middle line here, and we want to tilt the cup or the glass, whatever you were using, at a 45-degree angle so that the nitro doesn't go directly to the bottom. Basically, we'll start by pouring, and then you'll notice the head begins to form. With the water it won't. And then you can slowly start to tip the glass up, and then once it's towards the top or slightly below the top, you can cut it off, and then you can add a little bit of head by pushing this line forward like this, and that'll add a little bit of head.
I'm going to scoot around the other side. You want to do that one more time?
Yeah. So once again, 45-degree angle, pour, start to straighten out the cup. Once it reaches the top, cut it off when it's reached the top or very near it, and then if we want to add a little bit of head, push it forward, and then this is ready to serve. The same applies for the in-house cups, or the mason jars. The 12-ounce mason jars are going to be for nitro only, and the premise is exactly the same. So it's going to be pretty much the same exact thing, and then nitro is served without a straw. Unless they ask for one, obviously, and if they ask for ice, then do it for them. However, that's not the point. And then same thing with the regular cold brew, just like that. Fill it up to our standard line, 1 pint, and then go ahead with ice.
So I'm going to run through the cleaning tasks with you. So we have two different types of cleaner. We have Complete Cafe and Clearly Cold. Clearly Cold is going to be our washing solution, so think of it as like soap. Then we have Complete Cafe, which is our sanitizer, so like the Stearamine tablets. These are pretty cool bottles. It comes with a little measuring reservoir here. All you have to do is make sure it's empty, and then you simply squeeze the bottle and solution will come up through the line here. And we're only going to be using 30 mils, so you can just squeeze the bottle until it gets up to this middle line. It says 1 ounce there. And that's what we'll be using to clean the kegs. So the cleaning of the kegerator system can be divided into 3 sections. There's a system flush, so cleaning out the lines. The second part will be cleaning the kegs, and then the third part will be cleaning the faucets and the handles here. So we do have instructions, and these will be posted on the inside of the door here, but I'll just kind of run through them with you. So there's a bi-weekly cleaning, which will be the line flush, and that will be like the hoses. Basically what you'll do is you'll fill the keg with 4 gallons of water. I won't do that with you today, but basically you fill it up with 4 gallons, just grab one of the pitchers, and then we'll use the washing solution first, the clear to cold, make sure it's at 30 mils, and then you simply just pour it in, and then you'll seal this up with the cap. And kind of like tip it up and down, make sure it's like mixed up there, and then you'll hook up the keg. So same way you did with the cold brew, you'll have the gas line on the out. Is that what it is?
Gas line on the in?
Gas line on the in. All right, and the cold brew on the out. And then once that's all hooked up, basically you'll take the taps and you'll grab like a container of some sort, maybe like a Zanny bucket, and you'll just place it underneath, and you'll flush each line for 30 seconds. Once each line is flushed for 30 seconds, you'll take the connectors off of the keg, and you'll release this, and then you'll dump this out. Right. So you'll dump this out, and then you'll rinse it out with water. Put the lid back on, squish it around, and you'll dump that out. And then we'll sanitize it. It's literally the same process as the washing. You'll put 4 gallons of water, 30 milliliters of the Complete Cafe, and then once that's done, we'll put the lid back on again. Then you'll kind of tip it up and down again, hook it up. So same thing before. The gas line will go on the in, and the cold brew will go on the out. And then we'll flush both lines for 30 seconds again. Have the sandy bucket underneath. And then once you're done with that, you'll disconnect everything. You'll dump the solution out and then let it air dry while you're finishing up the rest of the closing tasks. If there's already cold brew in the keg, you can put that in a pitcher, and then after the cleaning is done, you can throw that back into the keg and have it cool off overnight. So that'll be done on Mondays and Fridays. We'll clean the kegs out 4 times a week. That'll be Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Basically, we're not doing anything with the lines this time. We're just washing out the kegs. We'll still use the same 2 solutions, 30 mils each. So first step to wash out the kegs is going to be to fill up the keg with 4 gallons of water, and then again you put 30 milliliters of whatever solution you're doing, and then what you'll do is you'll let this soak for 5 minutes, and then once that's done, you'll dump it out and rinse it out, and then dump that water out. Then you'll do the Sandy solution, so you'll fill it up again with 4 gallons of water, put 30 milliliters of the Complete Cafe, and you'll let that sit for 1 minute. And then after 1 minute, you'll dump that out, rinse the keg out, and let it air dry. Alright. And then the last thing, this will be a daily closing task, is to just spray these down and wipe them down. Now we've got 2 spray bottles here. We've got the Clearly Cold, and then the Complete Cafe, and the ratios for this bottle here are going to be 1 mil per bottle. There's not like a good marking on here, but just kind of eyeball it. It's going to be a very little amount if you ever have to refill the bottles. But basically what you do first is you use the Clearly Cold, and you'll spray you'll take these out, You'll kind of spray the handles down and the faucets. You'll take a clean sandy rag, maybe one line in there, wipe everything down. Then it also says to rinse it off with water. So you'll wet the rag, wipe it down with water, and then you'll grab the sanding solution, do the same thing, just wipe it. You don't have to rinse that off, that'll just be air dried.